May I request all the speakers to come to the dais, please?
I'm not sure that I should have been the first, but since I was right near the steps, it seemed easy enough to me.
Can, may I request Ms. Rami Chhabra to come to the dais, please? And Ambassador Veena Sikri. Meenakshi is going to be there in the audience. Request all of you to keep your mobiles in silent mode, please. Good evening, distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, and dear friends. It's with great pleasure and deep admiration that I welcome you all to this evening's exploration of Becoming the Storm, a remarkable work by the gifted storyteller Rami Chhabra. This evening, we delve into a poignant narrative that resonates deeply with the universal themes of individuality, resilience, and societal transformation, set against the vibrant yet challenging backdrop of a newly independent India. A story that transcends time and place. It profoundly captures the human quest for identity, independence, and self-realization. Rami Chhabra's Becoming the Storm is much more than a tale of personal insight, struggles, and triumphs. It's a rich tapestry that intricately intertwines the aspirations of a young woman with the cultural and social currents of a nation in the process of defining its identity. At its center is Indu, a spirited 16-year-old whose dreams of independence and self-fulfillment are persistently tested by familial expectations, societal norms, and the often overwhelming weight of traditions. Through vivid and evocative prose, Ms. Chhabra adeptly explores the nuances of a post-independence era, a period of profound upheaval and opportunity, where women's role in society were consistently evolving and the pursuit of personal ambitions often required both extraordinary courage and significant sacrifice. Indu's journey, marked by romance, heartbreak, and hard-won resilience, transcends the personal to become a powerful narrative of universal relevance. It stands as a tribute to the indomitable strength of human spirit and serves as a poignant reminder of the enduring struggle for gender equity and personal freedom. By situating Indu's story against the backdrop of a nation grappling with its own transformation, the book not only captures the spirit of generations striving to redefine its role in a changing society, but also invites reflection on the ongoing quest for autonomy and self-expression in the face of entrenched traditions. Becoming the Storm is an evocative exploration of the intersections between personal aspirations and collective cultural shifts, offering readers both a compelling narrative and a profound lens through which to consider the complexities of gender, tradition, and modernity. Tonight's program is graced by an illustrious panel of speakers, each bringing their unique perspectives to illuminate the depth and dimensions of this extraordinary narrative. We are deeply honored to have with us Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Member of Parliament, eminent author, and one of the most eloquent voices on contemporary social and cultural issues, is the fourth-term representative for Thiruvananthapuram and chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs, a prolific and best-selling author of 26 acclaimed books spanning fiction and non-fiction. He is also a former UN Undersecretary General and a former Minister of State for Human Resource Development and External Affairs. Dr. Tharoor's accolades include the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman, the Commonwealth Writers' Prize, the Crossword Lifetime Achievement Award, and the Sahitya Academy Award for An Era of Darkness, published in 2019. He has previously chaired the Parliamentary Standing Committees on Chemicals and Fertilizers and on Information Technology, exemplifying his multifaceted leadership and intellectual legacy. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Tharoor. Professor Veena Sikri, a distinguished former diplomat and convener of the South Asia Women's Network, SWAN, exemplifies a career bridging diplomacy and academia and societal transformation. With 37 years of exemplary service in the Indian Foreign Service from 1971 to 2008, she held prominent roles including High Commissioner to Bangladesh 2003 to 6 and Malaysia 2000 to 2003, Consul General in Hong Kong 1996 to 2000, and Director General of the Indian Council for Cultural Relations during 1989 to 1992. Transitioning to academia, she served as Ford Foundation's professor at Jamia Millia Islamia's Academy of International Studies during 2009 to 2013, where her research culminated in a seminal book on Malaysia-India relations. As the founding trustee and convener of SWAN, launched in 2009, she brings unparalleled expertise in gender and empowerment and societal transformation, advancing sustainable development across 9 South Asian nations: Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Myanmar, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Let's welcome Professor Veena Sikri. Professor Meenakshi Gopinath is not on the dais, but she's going to talk to us towards the later part of this program. And it's my privilege to introduce her. Of course, she doesn't need an introduction. She's Life Trustee in the International Center, renowned academician, former principal of Lady Shri Ram College, and a visionary leader in education and women's empowerment. She's the founder and honorary director of WISCOM, Women in Security, Conflict Management and Peace, an initiative that began in 1999 to promote the leadership of South Asian women in the areas of international politics, peace, security, and diplomacy. Professor Gopinath was the first woman to serve on the National Security Advisory Board of India, which she did from 2004 to 2006, where she sought to mainstream gender and human security concerns. She serves on the governing boards of research institutions, think tanks, NGOs, and educational institutions. We'll give her a big round of applause while she is in the audience. I'm sure the collective wisdom of all these speakers will undoubtedly enrich our understanding of becoming the storm, its relevance, and its resonance with our times. This evening, we are also privileged to hear from the author, Rami Chhabra, whose reflections on her creative process will deepen our connection to this profoundly moving story. Her courage and creativity inspire us to question, reflect, and dream, evoking the pulse of a nation and the plight of the individual within its embrace, a testament to the power of literature to illuminate the human experience. Ms. Chhabra is a distinguished media veteran with over 6 decades of experience, recognized as one of the India's pioneering television anchors and the country's first columnist dedicated to women's issues. In 1994, she launched and hosted the influential television series RC Social Watch, which tackled critical social concerns. Beyond her media career, Ms. Chhabra served as Additional Secretary Advisor in India's Health and Family Welfare Department and consulted with global organizations such as the World Bank, WHO, and UNFPA. She founded Stribal in 1975, a non-profit organization focused on community service and advocating for women's rights. A prolific writer, her work includes 6 children's books and the memoir Breaking Ground, Journey into the Media and Out, brought out by NBT in 2012. A graduate of Miranda House, she was awarded an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters degree by Forley Dickinson University, USA. Welcome, Mr. Ladies and gentlemen, adding to this evening's cultural richness, we are delighted to present a special Saraswati Vandana and a musical overture directed by the acclaimed theatre maestro Sarita Vohra, theatre director, Living Room. This will set the stage for an evocative and engaging reading of excerpts from the book by the immensely talented Deepali Bhasin and Jimmy Hasija. As we unveil Becoming the Storm, let us celebrate not only a literary triumph, but also the audacity of those who challenge conventions and inspire us to dream. And let us together embark on a journey that I am certain will leave us inspired and profoundly moved. Thank you for your presence tonight, and let the evening begin with the Saraswati Vandana. Saraswati Vandana.
Good evening. The Living Room Theatre is well known to IIC audiences, but this evening we are here only briefly for a very special reason, a very, very special occasion, to offer a special tribute to Rami Chhabra, whom I and my family have known for over 6 decades. To my generation and those that followed, her television programs and newspaper columns were an inspiration. And I've always been in awe of this beautiful, vibrant, brilliant Rami Chhabra. She's beyond words. So dear friends, our music maestro, VP Mishra, offers a Saraswati Vandana to bless the book, following which he'll play the overture composed by my brother, late Suresh Malik, for his iconic film, Spread the Light of Freedom. Subsequently, Deepali Bhasin and Jimmy Hasija, both distinguished actors from my Living Room Theatre group, will read excerpts from Becoming the Storm. Thank you. Over to you, Mishraji.
जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तव चरणों प्रणमामः। जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तव चरणों प्रणमामः। जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तव चरणों प्रणमामः। नाद ब्रह्ममयि जय वागीश्वरी नाद ब्रह्ममयि जय वागीश्वरी शरणं ते गच्छामः। जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तव चरणों प्रणमामः। त्वमसि शरण्या त्रिभुवन धन्या त्वमसि शरण्या त्रिभुवन धन्या सुरमुनिवन्दित चरणा नवरस मधुरा कविता मुखरा नवरस मधुरा कविता मुखरा स्मित रुचि रुचिराभरणा। जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तव चरणों प्रणमामः। पमगम ललित कलामयी ज्ञान विभामयी ललित कलामयी ज्ञान विभामयी वीणा पुस्तक धारिणी मतिरास्ताम्नो तव पद कमले मतिरास्ताम्नो तव पद कमले ऐकुण्ठाविषहारिणे जय जय हे भगवती सुरभारती तव चरणों प्रणमामः नाद ब्रह्ममयी जय वागेश्वरी नाद ब्रह्ममयी जय वागेश्वरी शरणं ते गच्छामः जय जय हे भगवती सुरभारती तव चरणों प्रणमामः 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 प्रणमामः
Thank you. Before I invite the author, Ms. Rami Chhabra, for her remarks and taking the session forward, may I request all the distinguished speakers to formally release the book. May I request Ambassador Saran to join them. Thank you. Over to you for taking the session forward.
The introduction to today's program and to me personally. I need to thank you not just for this evening, but for always being there, and most willingly. And dear friend Sarita Vohra, for your exceptionally kind words and the special contribution by your theatre group this evening, which is making it so much more special. Bless you for all the lovely words you said. But first and foremost, I must thank India International Center itself for the honor it has done me through the years by according a place in its programs to practically all my books, the memoirs, monographs, and children's books, and now this first fiction novel, Becoming the Storm, that we are discussing this evening. I'm grateful to IIC President Shyam Saran, Meenakshi Gopinath, Life Trustee, Director Srivastavaji, Secretary Wali, Tete, the program head, Rajiv Mishra in the library, and indeed to all the staff of IIC for giving me unstinting cooperation and support at all times. And now, before I go any further, I must first make amends for a silly slippage on my own part. In the last flurry of putting together the manuscript for the press, I neglected to put in a page of acknowledgements. So let me first of all thank, I don't know if Sanjoy is here today. He said he would briefly drop in. He was next door at the IHC. But let me thank Sanjoy Roy, who I think what I call a serendipitous chance meeting right here at the IIC led me on to meet with Anirudh Chakravarti, who is here today, but didn't come up to release the book, which is what I wanted him to do, the CEO of Blue One Inc. If you're here, please just acknowledge us by standing up. Yes, there you are. There you are, right. Thank you. And it was his instant enthusiasm that fueled the manuscript into becoming The Storm, which it had quite a different name at that time. I've benefited enormously from the two editors I worked with at Blue Ink, Len Howe, who is here. If Len would get up, please, and be acknowledged. And Palomi Sengupta in Calcutta, under the overall care of Praveen Mishra, Tiwari, I beg your pardon, Praveen Tiwari, whose marketing skills and media reach I will now find out as to what happens with the book, right? If it reaches a larger audience. And finally, my thanks to Ravi Shroff and New Tech Printers for the excellent production values, particularly of the cover, which effectively welds the title into a storm. And I want to share with you that it renders a most evocative reproduction of the painting done by none other than Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, which fortunately is in the public domain now and therefore could be used. And last but not least, I need to thank you, dear audience, for braving the chill and the pollution, and to be here. So many friends, too many to name individually. I'm touched that you are here. My friends, colleagues of my late husband, and what is more, the children of my friends who have gone across the river, including dear Shashi, with Lily here, but I remember Chandra with great, lovely evenings that we spent together. And I thank all of you for keeping up this friendship with me over the years. I think it's been more than half a century that I've known most of you here. Now, before I turn to my celebrated co-panelists, just a mite later, I'm going to call out two other celebrated artists, Dipali and Jimmy, who will treat you to excerpts from the book with a dramatic rendering, enticing you to read the book further.
Georgie, life of my life, Rano called out to her husband across the open doorway of the dressing area in the bedroom. Georgie, do come and sit here with me while I finish with my makeup and dress. She cooed again.
Smiling fondly, Shanti came and sat on the stool she had placed just for him next to her dressing table and waited expectantly. He knew she had something on her mind when she called for him in such a manner. Rano smiled coquettishly, tilting her head sideways to welcome him, even as she finished applying the deep red lipstick on her full lips.
It's Indu who has me worried, she finally shared as she held his hand.
Shanti blinked in bewilderment. Indu, he repeated, somewhat dazed. But Indu, their daughter, she had never given them a day's trouble on any count, least with her studies.
Shanti sat waiting for Rano's explanation, a puzzled, perturbed expression settling on his face. She was quick to sense his unexpressed panic. No, Gio, relax. Nothing has happened, she reassured. It's just that Indu is now over 16, lives away from home, and is getting subjected to all kinds of influences around her. She's now exhibiting very strong tastes of her own.
What's wrong with that? Shanti asked.
Nothing really, Gio. I was only giving an example of how she's begun to assert herself. And now she's good company. Her aunt Amu often takes her out for movies. The other day, she even took her for coffee to Gaylord's, that new restaurant in Connaught Place. Oh, Gio, I shouldn't have bothered you. She's such a good girl. Comes and tells me all, where she goes, what she does. No, I don't have any problems. I was only sharing that it's time to begin to look for a match for her. See what a good one Kamal has got? A really handsome colonel from a good family, and he didn't worry Papaji for any dowry either. But let me first identify some good boys to show to Indu before I talk further with you about this.
But for once, Shanti was not to be deflected by her easy prattle. I have told you so many times that you should talk to Amu and express a strong disapproval about her ways. You please instruct Indu categorically that she must come home straight from college. No gallivanting around town, not even with any of her aunts and uncles. Nor should she ever go to the cinema with boys and girls we don't even know.
Yes, Gio, she said meekly. But now he was carrying on.
Please don't fill her mind with this talk of matrimonial matches. She's much too young for this. I have another vision for Indu. She must graduate, sit for the IAS exam, launch into a career, and be equipped to stand on her own feet before we think about marriage for her. She's capable of it. Please don't divert her.
She had not seen him get upset with her in a long time. Not since that day, now some years ago. Bajewala Sant is famous far and wide as a holy man who can predict the future when he wants to. People flock to his ashram, and it is difficult to even get to see him, much less talk with him. Rano was excited that he would be visiting them at their home.
The next morning, Bajewala Sant arrived at their house, and at the precise moment that he disembarked from his Chevrolet, resplendent in a long ochre choga, looking like a figure stepping out of a Ranjit Singh era painting, Shanti and Rano were not waiting at the portico to greet him as they would have normally done. Shanti had gone inside to fetch an envelope and some money, and Rano to arrange a silver tray on which to offer it with a few flowers.
Indu, quickly assessing the situation, leapt through a small clearing in the hedge and instantly reached the driveway to welcome him with folded hands, while a slower Surinder followed awkwardly through the garden entrance. The son smiled benignly, but was somewhat bewildered at being received by just this young girl. In the process, he absent-mindedly dropped the pen he was slipping into his pocket. Indu saw the pen fall to the ground and instantly dived to pick it up to hand it to him. The Sant, assuming that the girl was bending to touch his feet, raised both his hands in blessing, saying to her,
My blessings, Beti. You will make a mark in life. Only I have to tell you this. There are two karmic turning points ahead of you in life. One soon, the other much later. Don't marry at 18, whatever you do. That relationship is fraught with karmic dukh, no matter how hard you work at it. It is the karmic destiny, karmic sorrow. Marry at 22, and your karma will be entirely different. A smooth life always. Remember my words.
Meanwhile, Shanti and Rano had rushed from inside and were fussing over the son, profusely apologetic for their absence to welcome him at the moment of his arrival. Rano ventured, Sanji, may I ask you something?
Yes, Bibi, he responded easily. Puchhan di lod nahi. You don't have to ask.
What do you mean, Sanji? Present worries will sort themselves out. What about Sahib Singh's health?
No, our good engineer is frail and frail he will remain. But he has the blessings of your good care, Bibi. Even if the wounds also come from the same hands, they alone are his healer.
Before anyone else could come there or a crowd gather at the gate, he had got into a sleek black limousine with his entourage and driven off. But destiny follows its own course. One somnolent afternoon, the phone shrilled and Indu picked it up. The call was from Dr. Veena Gujral. Veena rang to say that a relative had come from London, and through him, her sister Reena had sent a small package for Indu. Would she like to come across and pick it up? By the way, I have spotted Mr. Perfect especially for you, Indu. Just tell me when you will come, and I will introduce the two of you. Marriage is not on my agenda right now, Indu laughed. And if you really have found Mr. Perfect for me, well, it would be interesting to meet such a person, if only to find out if such a person does exist. Let's meet. What about tomorrow? Tea at Gaylord's?
At Gaylord's, Veena exclaimed with exasperation.
Mr. Perfect, Ashok is late. When I clearly told him he had to leave early to be back before dark. And to do this after he spent so much time canvassing with me to get you to meet him.
But barely were the words out of her mouth that she began to wave wildly, half getting up from a seat to attract the attention of the tall, well-built man who stood at the entrance looking around expectantly. Catching sight of her waving, he nodded and strode across and apologized. Sorry, but something really important came up at the last minute, just as I was leaving. Now, I can't wait to be introduced to this beautiful young lady when I've been waiting to meet for months.
Indu asked boldly, and why, pray, have you been wanting to meet me?
I have been seeing you walking into that newspaper building next to my office so many times these last few months and heard so much about you from my friends there. I want us to meet to see if we like each other enough to marry.
Her first direct marriage proposal, that too from a person she had never met, and with a third party whom she barely knew as an onlooker. Was this how the much talked about romance happened in real life? She heard him continuing.
On my part, I am very serious. How do I make you believe me?
She had lost track of time. She suddenly realized with a gasp how late it was and cried out, oh gosh, I'd better run before I turn into a pumpkin. I have Cinderella timings.
Hey, he now said, not so fast, please. We have to meet again soon. How and where do I meet you again? There was a clear hint of desperation in his voice.
I too would like us to meet again soon. Indu found herself responding. Ring me in the afternoon any day. We will try and fix something for next week. Indu repeated her phone number twice, making sure he had got it right, then got up to leave.
I will call tomorrow, not next week, he pleaded. Do let us meet soon and on our own next time. Indu nodded.
Ashok Madan, Mr. Perfect, accompanied by his parents, formally visited Rano's and Shanti's house to meet Indu. They arrived an hour later than was expected. There was little explanation for the delay, for punctuality did not seem an undue concern to anyone in the family. More surprisingly, Ashok's mother made no attempt to embrace or bless Indu as she came eagerly forward to greet her. Instead, she stood back and coldly appraised her. As she did so, Indu noticed her uncanny resemblance to Lalita Pawar, the actress famed for her portrayal of the oppressive mother-in-law in Hindi films. Silently, Indu prayed that this was just a bad coincidence.
Ashok's father was clearly awestruck by all that he saw. He ardently praised the ambience of the house and Rano's hospitality when he saw the array of snacks accompanying the tea. They barely acknowledged Indu, scarcely making any attempt to talk to her. Even Ashok maintained a decorous distance from her in their presence. Instead, he drew his mother into the limelight by disclosing her ability to sing, so that both families instantly joined to urge her to sing.
As she sang, everyone was baffled, if not slightly embarrassed, for pulling her sari and tightly round her. Ashok's mother threw back her head and launched into what seemed a veritable dirge. साहिल पे आए और ना खुदा ने सफीने डुबो दिए आहा जिंदगी ने यूं हंसाया कि हम रो दिए. We reached the shore, but the great sailor upturned the boats. Life so laughed that I had to weep. Went its opening lines.
Ashok's father broke the silence that followed with hearty applause. Beautiful, but not quite the lyric for today when we are here to launch new boats. Then he laughed heartily at his own pun.
Lovely voice, Benji, Rano purred. Now, should we discuss when we should have the engagement ceremony? Directly questioned, Ashok's mother removed her spectacles, carefully wiped them with her sari edge. Putting them back on, she sniffed. जल्दी मत कीजिए. हमने अभी आपको बताया नहीं कि हमें लड़की पसंद है कि नहीं.
Indu gasped as she heard Ashok's mother. Getting up, she ran out of the room. Shanti and Rano, not knowing what to do, looked towards Ashok in horror and dismay. Don't worry. Shanti and Rano took hold of themselves and graciously escorted the trio out of the door and to their car.
But back inside, Indu was inconsolable. Lying face downwards on a bed, she sobbed her heart out into the pillow and would not allow anyone to come near to talk to her, fiercely telling everyone, including her father, to just leave her alone. But destiny coursed on, and the wedding was just a day away.
The dinner, freshly prepared in huge bubbling cauldrons on makeshift stoves and tandoors, set outside the kitchen by frontier cooks, specially arranged by Shanti's friend Mohan, an acknowledged food connoisseur.
If tomorrow is anything like this will be the wedding of the year in Delhi, Amu pronounced with satisfaction.
Past noon, the phone shrilled in the dining room, and their humble servant, Diwan, came running out to tell them it was for Sahibji. Bauji, Ashokji's father.
Shanti sprang from his chair and quickly went indoors. Madan Sahab, vadai ho, vadai ho. How nice it is for us to be greeting and congratulating each other this morning. That is the big day in the lives of both our children.
But the man at the other end was less hearty. Singh Saab, he responded curtly, quietly coming to the point. I have just come to know that for even this very small barat of 99 you are allowing me to bring tonight, sorry, you have made only buffet arrangements for the dinner. We have many older persons among our family and friends who are not used to standing and eating, so you will need to have us all seated.
Shanti looked at his watch. It's nearing 1 o'clock, Madan Sahib. A few older guests will certainly be seated, but how is it possible for me to arrange a sit-down dinner for all 100 this evening at this late hour?
You are well enough to do whatever you want to do, Singh Saab, the other responded tartly, his voice crackling loudly over the receiver. I need to get your assurance right now that every single Bharati from A to Z will be seated, or there will be no Bharat this evening.
Does the wedding take place? If so, what were the repercussions of Indu not paying heed to the son's karmic advice? Read more to find out how Indu embraced her power, faced the odds, and truly became the storm.
Thank you, Diwali and Jimmy. And now Shashi and Veena, our turn. I have to say that I'm delighted that the three of us are here together, because I remember, well, of course, one has seen Shashi in the house as a young boy, studying in St. Stephen's. And Veena, I met for the first time, newly joined in the Foreign Service when I was in Moscow. Yes. And we went to a kindergarten, and they were so taken aback by a diplomat and a journalist from India coming that they served us champagne in the kindergarten.
Those were the good days in Moscow.
Beyond that, the two of you participated in my quiz program, Pick a Mate, which was then looking out for people that were really making it in the city. And you can give me credit that I had Shashi and I had Veena starring in Pick a Mate.
You spotted talent very well.
So from that day, I mean, that is the 70s, right? We are here today, and now you shoot and ask me what you want to.
You want me to go first?
If you like, please.
Okay, well, thank you, Rami. It's a great honor to have been invited by you today to speak on your book. And I very well remember that we have known each other for more than 50 years, half a century. And right at the very outset, when I just joined the service and was full of all that excitement and how many things, wonderful things we did together. You know, I think that your work in media has been tremendous. And now, of course, you've gone into fiction. But I respect you the most, Rami, for the work you have done for women, for the articles you have written on women's empowerment, the research work even that you have done on women's empowerment. And in fact, after leaving government, while I was holding the professor's chair at Jamia Millia Islamia, I actually started a group, the South Asia Women's Network, which brings together women from 9 countries of South Asia, the 8 SAARC countries plus Myanmar. And, you know, many of the issues that we've discussed about what is it that women really need to be empowered, is reflected through your work, but many of the issues come up in the book as well. First of all, I must say that the book is very nostalgic for anybody who's lived in Delhi. You know, I mean, imagine a time in Delhi where you could zip from Delhi Cantonment to Connaught Place to Old Delhi just like that. I mean, you couldn't even dream of doing it today. You know, I mean, you couldn't even think of ever having a situation where you'd be torn between that. So it brings back very good times, because we did that. You know, I was actually living in Delhi Cantonment at the time. My father was in the army, and we would take the university special to go to Delhi University. So right across the same route that you've described in your book, that Indu took, and you know, her meetings in Connaught Place, it brought back a lot of memories. Rajiv and I used to do a lot of those meetings, you know. So it was very nostalgic reading the book. But the issue that I want to really ask you about is an issue that we in the South Asia Women's Network are grappling with, and which is, you cannot talk about women's empowerment by itself. You know, there's so many seminars and others where you discuss, and women are there by themselves and for themselves. But this is wrong. You have to bring the men on board. And this is what is missing in our society. So the question I want to ask you is, the torment, was it a torment, or was he not bothered about it at all? The role of Ashok, what he went through. I mean, he was so indifferent to Indu's travails, to the problems she was having with her in-laws, and how they were deliberately choosing to insult her and her parents. He chose to ignore all of that. Was that right? Because I know he's torn between tradition and modernity. I know the book is about Indu being torn between tradition and modernity. But I think Ashok's role is very important to understand the men of today and how women have to tackle them. So, so I want to ask you specifically that what was the turmoil in Ashok's mind, according to you? Was he really caring about Indu at all? Or was he totally selfish and said, you know, I have my job, I have my friends, and then I have my parents who have to look after. And all this contributed to that torment building up in Indu, and then she takes the last step and, you know, threatens to kill her husband. So I think that, what was your view on this?
You know, Veena, I don't think I have really gone beyond examining Ashok's turmoil in that. My agenda in writing this book was different, though I shared the same values. I have spoken very often that you go, and not only spoken, but if you look at the inscription in this book, the book is dedicated for all the women who have ever struggled and the many who have emerged to become the storm, and equally for the many fine men who partner the change process.
Yes.
So I'm very much with you on that point. But in writing this book, let me say, first of all, I wrote it during the COVID period. And what was my trigger? We were locked up. At that time, the world seemed to be changing in ways that we really couldn't understand where we were going, what was happening. And I thought I owed it already in 1920, I'm losing my skills from my television days. Already 4 years ago, I was 82, and I thought there were not many who had lived through the period that, you know, you say is nostalgic. I don't know how many will be nostalgic about it, even now in this room. And so I felt I needed to, one, document that nostalgia with some nuance, look back on that idealism, innocence, euphoria that seemed to permeate the atmosphere. And yet, there were problems there. There were problems that people like me lived through. There were problems that many shared their experiences with me. You know, after all, I've written a column on women's issues for a decade and a half in The Statesman. So there were stories and stories and stories in my mind that needed to come together. And if I may share a secret with you, this book was originally called Karmic Weaves, because I found myself like Penelope. What was it? Penelope? Huh?
Penelope.
Yeah, whatever it was, Ithaca, you know, sitting there
Weaving
that tapestry, the 30-year Trojan War going on outside. Not that I was unweaving it, but I kept on writing. And so, in part, that book is bringing that nostalgia back. The other part is the issues that I've been involved with. And so I find I've come to fiction, and sometimes I feel that life today is such that you have to retreat into fiction because it's become too strange outside. And also I felt maybe by storytelling, we could have a greater universalization of the ideas. So what I've addressed is early marriage, domestic violence, the whole issue of dowry demands and dowry deaths. You know, this is not a place for statistics, but I'm horrified to tell you that even today, when we have progressed enormously on many, many indicators on women, 22.5% of women in this country are still married underage, which is below 18. And if you look at the statistics on crimes against women, the graphs are going up and up and up. You know, Brinda Karat has done a book on violence against women, and I just one more fact, and then I'll give it to you. She has calculated that the number of women that have died with dowry-related deaths is 65,633, which is more than the number of soldiers that have died in all the wars that independent India has fought.
Yeah. May I just...
So why are we not talking about this?
Exactly. So just before Shashi takes us, my question is, you're right, those statistics are absolutely horrifying and they're getting worse. But my question is, the focus must come on the perpetrators now. You know, we keep talking, and women are suffering, and they're suffering terribly because of this. But we aren't focusing enough on the perpetrators. This is why I'm talking about Ashok, because, I mean, surely what is his responsibility? Seeing what his wife is going through, getting more and more puzzled and disheartened and terrified of what is happening to her, and still wanting to keep the marriage going. I mean, how could he have helped more? That is why I think the focus has to come on the perpetrators. So I was asking you about his mental makeup. But I agree fully with what you said, and maybe Shashi could take on from here.
Well, Veena, you mentioned that you wanted men to be brought on board. I guess I'm the man who's been brought on board in this conversation. But I must say, first of all, in front of my mother, that I've always called you Auntie Rami, and now I can't do that on a stage like this. I shall greet you with an undue familiarity. But I've known Auntie Rami since I was very early teens, because her late Uncle Viren and my father were colleagues in the Statesman. It goes back a very long way. But I've always admired her precisely, as you said, for her writing on women's issues, your contributions to women's social development. I think one of the first things I read by you was your account of attending the UN Conference on Women in Mexico. And then we met soon after that when you came to my home in Geneva when I was early in my UN career. And you've done so much pioneering work and writing on all these aspects of women's development, social development, women's rights, empowerment. I think fairly recently, was it last year, you sent me that wonderful 100-page monograph, which was the last thing I read by you. So this was, first of all, a revelation to me that you would have thought of writing a novel, because after what one would think of as a career, a lifetime in writing non-fiction about women and writing it very strongly and acquiring a reputation and expertise, that you've demonstrated when it's never too late to actually embark on a new genre and pull it off. And I must say, as a reader, that you know, there's a loving attention to detail. You heard some of that in the reading we got here. The husband watching his wife dress, the Baba driving off in a limousine. You've got lots and lots of details. And as Veena says, there's a lot of evocation of a Delhi that certainly I have never seen. I moved here in the early 70s to go to college, but the Delhi of the 50s and 60s, but certainly I think Rami has seen and perhaps seen firsthand as a very young girl, and slightly younger than the characters in the book, but she's able to describe what she's seen and evoke that so wonderfully. And I think that's very striking. The other theme that struck me was the whole tension between tradition and modernity being enacted through the life of this family. So it's a microcosm of a larger struggle taking place in India. India as a country, post-partition, going through all the trials and tribulations that we went through happening, and there are casual references to events taking place, political events. You know, suddenly the incident of the freedom fighters being stopped in the border with Goa suddenly pops up, or the war with Pakistan is mentioned by the character. So you see at different stages, there are things happening to the country in a very subtle way, because they're not just blatantly mirrored in what happens to the characters, but it's very clear that there are, and I'm going to come to a question in a second, but just to observe that there's all this there. Veena's point about the man, I think it's fair to say this is a woman's depiction of the family relationships, and you must not blame an author for identifying with her principal character, because that is the vehicle for her expression of her own concerns and things. But yes, you would say that the charming Ashok, the suitor, the suitable boy, suddenly turning out to be quite that unsuitable. And as you say rightly, the indifference that he demonstrates to his wife's tribulations during her first pregnancy and so on, which then ends badly. that is troubling. And is it a character flaw? Is Rami, the author, trying to depict some of the insensitivities of men that they don't come across? Or is it simply that as she identifies with her protagonist doesn't see whatever's motivating him because he doesn't express it to her? And that may be another message, that, you know, there needs to be a lot more communication. There are letters scattered throughout the novel, right? Letters written by the principal characters, and it's striking that the book ends with a letter by the now estranged wife to her husband. And I think that's very striking. The tension between tradition and modernity is also apparent, I think, in your own conflict. And why is it that the Babaji, this epitome of superstition and tradition, all that Nehruji would have rejected, actually turns out to be right? All his predictions are accurate. That's terrifying. I mean, why you are giving the Baba so much more agency than you gave Hindu? But anyway, that's another matter. The question I wanted to ask you was there, in the process of writing, a conscious effort to sort of show the transformations of India through the transformations of the characters? That is, that what the characters were going through, the same tensions were happening on the national level, and maybe even some of the sufferings. I mean, I certainly felt at one point that the financial troubles of the family were rather reflective of the economic troubles of India after independence, poverty, PL 480, God knows what else. It wasn't America coming here, but a brother-in-law. But nonetheless, I mean, you've got people coming in both to extract something and to give you something because you needed it. Was that consciously in your mind, or am I reading too much into it? And we all know from studies of Shakespeare that critics often read more into authors than the authors might ever have intended. But I did find a sort of allegory there. Was it there in your writing? Were you intending to convey that?
No, I don't think, not on the point of people coming in from abroad or that aspect. But the allegory maybe was on a different plane. Two things. You raised the Baba. And I deliberately brought in a mystic thread. For one thing, it appeals to a lot of people. There are a lot of people that believe in Babas, right? But secondly, I don't think this is so much ballyhoo either.
Okay.
I have seen predictions coming true.
All right.
So I thought that was an interesting literary device. I thought it was an interesting literary device to use. And I have to confess to you that really, when I started out writing, part of my attempt was the nostalgia of the past to be recorded. But I also felt that I had a very dramatic end in mind, not the end that I have here. Mm-hmm. I started out with that thought in my mind, and I said, I have a story. I will start with the 60s, and then right into the end, this will happen. And then suddenly I found, maybe I'd written too much. It had piled up, in any case. But then it stopped. It just stopped. I couldn't move to a novel. I just, this is what they say, that the novels write themselves sometimes.
They do. But, Rami, it's interesting. So the Baba gives her this grim prediction, and she says, whatever the karmic thing, I will turn it into light. And there is a modern, young Indian woman coming to adulthood, as India was coming to adulthood, saying she will make her own destiny. And yet, she is the one who becomes then the victim rather than the agent. She's acted upon, the Baba's predictions come right, everything goes wrong. At the end, now we can't give away the ending, but there is a reassertion of agency, but still the possibility of reconciliation in the very last letter.
Yes, I think it's a cliffhanger. But the idea is, maybe you're going to ask me what happens next when you write a sequel?
Well, that's in your hands. Why not?
Yeah. No, so what I'm saying is that I did have an end in mind, but then the book didn't work towards that end. And I suddenly was stuck. And then the Baba gave that inspiration.
There you are.
And it worked out.
Okay.
Yeah, well, no, that's a very important point that the story does take the author over, you know. And although you wanted to have a different end in mind, but the compulsion of the narrative led you somewhere else. But my second issue that I'd like to say is that after all, this beautiful novel that you've written will be read by today's generation, by the young girls and boys of today. So, in your mind, from the life of Indu, I talked about Ashok last time, but I'd like to talk about Indu now, because you know, it really strikes one that here's this brilliant young girl. She's very talented and she has every ambition in life. And her father is encouraging her in that ambition, you know, that you must study, you must, and she registers for a law degree, and she must join the IAS, whatever else that you want to do. And she's very talented in writing. She's already recognized by media, by leading media, as a journalist. Even as a youngster, she comes on television.
Actually, the father would have wanted her to join the IFS. I think Rami was wrong there.
Yeah, she should have said IFS or IFS. I agree with that. So, but then she has all these ambitions and she has a talent. But then suddenly, in one stroke, therein walks Ashok in that restaurant, and she gives up everything. You know, she doesn't think she's giving it up, but it turns out that way. So, my question is, what would you say is the message of your book for a bright young girl today in college, preparing for life, very talented? What is the message for her from your book?
Veena, I think the message is woven right through. I believe that you cannot deal with the issues that we're dealing with. These are horrible social evils that are part of our society. But they can't be dealt with a spirit of revenge and retribution. And so the message throughout the book really is of compassion, transcendence. I don't know if you saw that, but right through, Indu doesn't give up. And she fights for her dignity. She fights for her rights. But she does her responsibilities, you know. And so I think that's the message that I would like to give to the young, that you must stand for yourselves. But the whole idea is we are not out to recreate this world into this us against them kind of thing. I love all the young men around me. Yeah?
But as a man, I wonder whether you couldn't have made Indu try to communicate a bit more to Ashok. Couldn't Indu have tried to communicate a bit more to Ashok? Look at Ashok. Okay, let's look at this for a second from a man's point of view. Here's this guy brought up in a traditional family. Everyone has their roles, right? The mother-in-law, the Lalita Pawar figure, has her very sacrosanct place. He marries because he's attracted to this girl. But once he's got that part of his life going, he's supposed to play another role, and the family takes over and oppresses her. I mean, I'm being simplistic, but you get the point. Now, my feeling was, if this bright young woman who was so self-independent, aware, you know, the one who was determined to change her karmic destiny into light, I love that expression, couldn't she have said to this guy, listen, I've got to, you know, shake you by the scruff of the neck. You have to understand you're not seeing what's happening to me.
Shashi, I don't think you...
Is it her age? Was she just too young to think of being able to do that? Or was she also a prisoner of roles that she couldn't play? The role of that independent college girl when she was you
know, you're right
the victim.
In that sentence when you say that she was too young. Because I was going to say, Shashi, perhaps you've not read the book finely.
Possibly not.
Sentence you skipped through, because I have shown how she's made the attempts to talk to Ashok. But Ashok is too sophisticated. And she is too simple for all that independent and that an 18-year-old girl who's not even quite 18, flung into this situation. She doesn't know how to handle it. So, I mean, it's woven through. That's why I called it karmic weaves to begin with. But my publishers felt the book wouldn't sell.
No, this is a better title. It's a wonderful title. I think you wanted some questions from the audience, if anyone would like to ask Rami ji or us. There's a hand right there in the front row.
Yes. Somebody give her a mic, please.
Yeah, now it's on. Firstly, congratulations, Ramiji. As one of the children you referred to, of your friends, I'm really impressed, and my parents would be so happy if they could be here today with you. Now, I just wanted to ask you, because this is, as Shashi said, this is another phase in your life, but to take on the whole new writer's persona, writing a novel. You've written many other things, but writing a novel, how tough was it for you? I just want to hear of this, not about the subject, but just about the craft now of writing a novel. How did you approach it? And of course, I'm very intrigued by the karmic, thing which you just said. So tell us a bit about that. Which prediction precisely came true? Let's hear a bit about that too.
You're going to have to read the book for that. You can't expect me to give away too much, then they won't go out and buy
in
the
your
book.
personal experience.
But there are predictions in it which come true.
In your personal experience.
In my own...
Yes.
Okay. Okay, you got me on that. Yeah. I'm not a believer. I'm not a believer, but on occasion, I have gone to an astrologer with friends that are, and I'll give you one straight away. Somebody looked at my hand and said, "Aapko to sarkari bhari naukri milne wali hai." And I was an intrepid journalist at that point. The question didn't arise, He said, "Aur abhi milni thi, par kuch gadbad ho gayi. Par fikr na karo, milegi." Believe it or not, this did happen to me. Weeks later, Rajiv Gandhi handed me that additional secretary in the government of India, and there was Bandobadhyaya saying to me, "You renegade," because I arrived into government from being a critic outside. So yes, I have come to realize that there are clairvoyant voices, and there are a lot of quacks around us, but that there are clairvoyant voices. There is something to this that does happen. Believe me, I went back looking for that astrologer. Could never find him.
Excuse me. Here, ma'am. Rami, here. This side, ma'am. Here.
Yeah.
I'm a parent of two already married daughters. My question is, do parents, after the marriage, the girl's parents, have a role to play still to continue in her life?
The parents of the girl or the parents of the boy?
Parents of the girl.
Sorry.
Do parents of girls still have a role to play in their daughters' lives after their marriage?
Or is it going to be...
I would say that today, in fact, if there's one very positive development, that is that girls are asserting that they have as much right to look after their parents as the boys have to look after theirs. And one of the positive developments that is taking place is that there is, you look after my parents, I look after yours, our parents.
Yeah.
And this is really the philosophy that people like me and Veena, and I'm sure Shashi, all of us want to bring about. We don't want to turn the world around so that what the alpha male did, now the alpha female says, "Oh, if you could have a couple of affairs, so can I," or, so on and so forth. But I think we need to reshape roles into much more positive directions. And I will add one more point to that. I think men have suffered as much. You're right in pointing out. Maybe I should, when I write the sequel, look at Ashok more.
That's true.
Because men have suffered. We have had a very imbalanced work and family situation. And it has been bad not only for women. The men have paid a price for that too.
But you're right that the answer to that is that they have to share the burden. So if there's you can't shut a door. When a woman gets married and goes into another home, she hasn't forgotten about her parents. She hasn't shut the door forever. She wants to keep that door open. And if you allow her to keep that door open, then the other door, which is to her in-laws' home, that will also be open because she will then share that as well. And so you'll have a happy... But then the man must be willing to accept that, because he will face resistance from his parents. So this is the sharing part. Otherwise, you have women's unpaid work, which is, care of the elderly, care of the children. 80% done by women. Men don't do it at all. And that becomes a burden which a girl can't get over.
But I think one thing we have to not lose the opportunity to, thanks Shashi, thanks. You keep, you now the pro. So, I think we can't lose this opportunity to emphasize that we are, instead of on some issues going forward, we are regressing. And particularly the dowry issue. I found a cutting, and I can't remember these figures, so I brought it along. I'm horrified to find, I think this is the Economic Times, if I'm not mistaken, that Indian weddings are now the second biggest industry after food and grocery. Can you believe that? Worse, Indians spend twice as much on a wedding as they do on education. And many times more than what the Americans do on a wedding. And I just have to give you one anecdote to make the point that what I'm wanting to focus on these issues, I think the women's movement have moved away from some of these things. Way back in the 70s, we formed this Dahej Virodi Chetna Manch and whatnot, and we fought these battles, reformed the dowry bill, brought in the obscenity bill, brought in many things because the women's movement was together. We've been fractured, and I think we've gone in different directions, and sexuality has overtaken the women's movement more than anything else. But we cannot allow this kind of expenditure to take place on dowries. And I will end with this anecdote. I have a house in Ranikhet. I have a caretaker there whom I pay 10,000, 12,000 rupees a month. I've had him for many years, and he knows very well that I will not support him on a wedding, I will support him on education. We managed to get his first daughter through college. But the second one, when I went, he said, Madam, abhi to aapko mere ko loan dena hi dena hai. Kyun? मेगा की शादी हो रही है, बहुत अच्छा घर मिल गया है, 500 आदमी को मैं होटल में ठहरा रहा हूँ. I said, go get lost. I pleaded with him, get the man on the phone. I will talk to him. मैं मंदिर में बैठ के आपकी शादी करवा देती हूँ, मैं अपने घर में खाना करवा देती हूँ. No. I went to the village only to give the little check that I would give to the girl in any case, whether I believe in these marriages or fancy marriages or not. And do you know, at the haldi ceremony, where we normally, the haldi ceremony is where the girl sits in the worst possible clothes, and haldi is mallowed all over her face and body, and then the next day she bathes and emerges as a beauty, Now here in this village, this girl was sitting with her in a bright yellow suit, which had a price tag hanging out because they needed to show that it cost 6,000. And she had her feet in a bowl of haldi. And as soon as I entered, 3 videographers arrived, and the girl's parents on either side of me, to take the videos. So this was the kind of expenditure that this poor caretaker said, कि तो शादी में तो करना ही करना होता है. The end of that story is a sad one. 3 months later, when I went on my next visit, the girl was back in the house. She had bruises down her back, blue as could be. the court, I have personally ventured to go and talk to the magistrate, even though that's things you don't do. Nobody does a thing. Nobody does a thing. And she dare not now even live in the village, because now she is sort of, used property, and she's gone off to live with a Thai somewhere. So this is happening all around us, and you have the Ambanis doing this huge wedding, and that's become the aspirational role for all of us. So that's why you did have to have her sitting wearing this haldi suit in a haldi bowl, and the videographers there, because what is happening at the top is what percolates down. And so we just have to mount a campaign to say this is not on. There are, George Verghese famously said Bharat and India, but now this Viksit Bharat, the Bharat itself is divided into two. And then there is this Viksit Bharat, and then there is the other Bharat that has gone nowhere, but they want to do that. And we are no longer thinking of what people like me dreamt, and I have written about that in my book here, that Indira Gandhi getting married in the khadi that was woven by Jawaharlal Nehru in the jail and with flowers in her hair, that's no longer an aspirational model for us to follow.
That's wonderful. Well, maybe this is the right note to end with Hum Honge Kamyab.
Yes, yes. I have my stormtroopers from Sribal. And so we will give you our theme song before we end.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Ask me. So,
Yeah. हम चलेंगे साथ साथ हम चलेंगे साथ साथ एक दिन पूरा है विश्वास हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन
नहीं डर किसी का आज, नहीं डर किसी का आज। पूरा है विश्वास, नहीं डर कामयाब एक दिन हम होंगे कामयाब, हम होंगे कामयाब, हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन। हो मन में है विश्वास, पूरा है विश्वास, हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन, हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन, हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन।
May I invite Professor Meenakshi Gopinath for her concluding remarks?
Good evening, friends. Rami ordered me to do the vote of thanks and also to make a few concluding remarks. And when Rami orders, you jolly well obey. First of all, I'd really like to thank you for that beautiful Vandana and Sarita ji for that very, very emotional opening. And thanks to Geetanjali and Jimmy for the reading. Dipali. We've just heard a riveting discussion on Indu's world. and her veritable coming of age, coming into her own, to claim her personhood, dignity, and rescript her identity after almost debilitating efforts to build and sustain fractured relationships within the oppressive demands of patriarchal expectations and family honor. It's a stark reminder of the need to transgress received notions of security, of stability, and matrimony at the altars at which women, even today, in many parts of our country, sacrifice dignity, bodily integrity, entitlement, and potential. So how then does the caged bird sing till it is able to find the sweet song of freedom? How indeed does one find both voice and agency? These questions present themselves dramatically as women attempt to navigate multiple roles, multiple identities as professionals, as homemakers, simply as human beings. In the dialectic of tradition and modernity, and through the maze of the violence of expectations, structural, emotional, and physical. It seems in many ways, for many, even today, the more things change, the more they are the same. Or do we go by Eliot's cautionary adage that time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future, and that time future contains time past? So then what? Dr. Tharoor and Ambassador Sikri have so deftly revealed to us the several layers of the chiaroscuro of Indu's life and its trajectory of choice, of roads not taken. And the final dramatic denouement from her descent to the depths of despair, to that climactic moment of epiphany, and I quote, "Sunlight and shadow like life, like karma," she mused, smiling as she stretched herself. "Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Every sinew of my body messages its readiness to grasp whatever comes now." And again, how she emerged from a tortuous night of trauma and terror, not broken, but with the iron that entered her soul tempered into steel. The lifeblood coursing through her veins, throbbing affirmation of the inherent strength of the human will to rise above all odds. Rising becomes a force in itself to reckon with. This conjures up images of the volcano eventually releasing all that is churning within, and it reminded me of poet Dushwan's famous lines, "Ho gayi hai peer parvat, si pighalni chahiye, is Himalay se koi Ganga nikalni chahiye." And Maya Angelou's famous refrain, for all those of us and all those who are not here, who have grappled with their own dark nights of the soul, "I do not want merely to survive, but I want to thrive. And I want to do it with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style." And then becoming a force of transformation and change, sans anger, sans revenge, "Sirf hangama khada karna mera maqsad nahi lekin, sirf hangama khada karna mera maqsad nahi lekin, meri koshish ye hai ki surat badalni chahiye." They say that every work of fiction, every novel is also in some ways autobiographical. May I dare to say that? And some, like Heidegger, also claim it is made by the reader. Every reading, in a sense, is a conversation with the text. It leads you from the seen to the yet unseen. Veena Sikri and Shashi Tharoor have breathed a different light and life, yielding an expansive reading. But above all, it remains Rami Chhabra's telling in what is referred to as the metaphoric mother tongue. That is what we celebrate here today. Not the stentorian father tongue, but the language of inclusion, the language that is often in the shadows of silence, but always on the verge of song, the language in which all maps can change, the language that can speak truth to brute power. We are delighted to celebrate Rami in her new avatar as a fiction writer. Here too, as always, she exhorts people never to succumb to the language of victimhood, but to recover and reclaim power anew with compassion and with the ethics of care. Rami Chhabra once told me that the women's movement taught her to speak your mind even if your voice shakes. She has been a part of that pioneering community of gutsy, gritty women who developed the discourse around the watershed landmark towards equality report in 1975 that changed the way in which women as citizens began to be perceived in the context of the unfinished agenda of the promise of equality and equal opportunity enshrined in Articles 14 and 15 of our Constitution. We celebrate the 75th year of our Constitution this year, and the Commission on the Status of Women in 1973 had begun to reconfigure the public discourse on women and raise questions on received patriarchal paradigms of development, of health, of education, violence, work, unpaid labor, sexuality, and of course, contraception. Today, the whole discussion on population is being turned on its head, but we'll wait and see how that unveils itself. Family laws, issues that were hitherto obscured and invisibilized, addressing also the many complicities of the patriarchies of family, of community, and of the state that are arraigned against women. Rami was in the forefront of these many debates. Rami and her public-spirited comrades or partners in crime, whichever way you look at it, highlighted the interlinkages, as Dr. Tharoor said, between voice, agency, and indeed political representation that impinge on the experience of women, foregrounding that their lack of equal access to spaces of power and decision-making constitute a form of structural violence, the violence of exclusion. Back to Rami's own journey. Very often, she was a lone dissenting voice, as much against the state tropes on empowerment. By the way, I dislike that word intensely. As speaking out against the smug certitudes of some sections of civil society initiatives, as one of India's early feminist activists after independence, newspaper columnist and communication expert, prolific writer, even bureaucrat, I'd say a kind of unwilling bureaucrat at some point. She left an indelible impact on policy spaces, national and international, that she inhabited across the sectors of health and family welfare. She was, as you all know, a pioneer anchor and content producer. As an Indo-Pakistan peace activist, she was never apologetic of her deeply secular credentials. We certainly need more of your tribe today, Rami, and her penchant for asking difficult questions that often interrogated some of the basic assumptions of international agencies like the WHO, the UNFP, and even the World Bank. That took a lot of courage at that point of time. If there is one phrase that sums up the force that describes this woman of substance, it is frankly speaking, and she uses that all the time. It is one she, as I said, she uses a lot, and it gives a sense of what motivates her and explains her abiding presence in the women's movement in India, even as the issues that animate it today are different. And they are different in scope, they are different in emphases, and its newer positions may not necessarily reflect her own positions today. But Rami has remained among the staunchest advocates of the idea of equal representation in legislatures. And she remains deeply conscious that the delicate balance between seeking equality and recognizing difference still remains the core conundrum for feminist reclamation of democracy as well as the exercise of citizenship. She also believes that women's reservation is not about adding women and stirring, or women advocating for women's issues. It is about creating a new lexicon, a vocabulary for a social compact, collaboratively with men, to assert inclusive democracy and citizenship, and above all, human dignity. The mantra for the Republic in the 75th year of our Constitution and beyond. So she brings to her new avatar as a writer of fiction the same spirit of the potentialities of the human spirit to make despair unconvincing and hope practical. That is the storm, Rami, that we all seek to resonate with. So wishing Rami all success on this new journey. जुस्तजू हो तो सफ़र ख़त्म कहाँ होता है, जुस्तजू हो तो सफ़र ख़त्म कहाँ होता है, यूं तो हर मोड़ पे मंजिल का गुमा होता है. So there are many, many more horizons, and thank you very much, Veena Sikri and Shashi Tharoor, for having opened a whole new world for us today. And thank you as always, Rami. Following your orders, your command, your wish is my command. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. Please let's give Rami a standing ovation.